All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. My name is Kyle Demian, and I am here with Renji Matthew, as always. And on today's show, we're going to talk about a recent interview with Jared Bernstein, who is the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors for Joe Biden. And he did a recent interview where he was totally confused and perplexed on a question that was asked about money and how money works inside of the U.S. economy. The question that was asked is, why are we borrowing in a currency that we print ourselves? Why do we even borrow money if we can print the U.S. dollar? And he just has no idea or no way to answer this question. So we're going to show you guys the 1 minute clip. It's about 1 minute and 40 seconds long. And then we're going to give our takes on it and just kind of talk about what this means and what the answer to the question should have been. And then, what this means for you in planning for your financial future. Renji, as I go to share the screen, is there anything that you want to add before we watch this here together?
No, well, let's just go ahead and watch and then talk about it afterwards.
Let's do it. All right, cool. Give me 1 second and let's play it.
The U.S. government can't go bankrupt because we can print our own money.
It obviously begs the question, why exactly are we borrowing in a currency that we print ourselves? I'm waiting for someone to stand up and say, why do we borrow our own currency in the first place?
Like you said, they print the dollar. So why does the government even borrow?
Well, again, some of this stuff gets, some of the language that some of the language and concepts are just confusing. I mean, the government definitely prints money, and it definitely lends that money, which is why the government definitely prints money, and then it lends that money by selling bonds. Is that what they do? They sell bonds. Yeah, they sell bonds, right? Because they sell bonds and people buy the bonds and lend them the money. Yeah. So a lot of times, at least to my ear with MMT, the language and the concepts can be kind of unnecessarily confusing, but there is no question that the government prints money and then it uses that money to I guess I can't really talk. I don't get it. I don't know what they're talking about. Because it's like the government clearly prints money. It does it all the time, and it clearly borrows. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this debt and deficit conversation. So I don't think there's anything confusing there.
All right. So the funny part is that he says that some of the language and concepts are confusing. And at the very end, he wraps it up by saying, the government just prints the money and they use that money. It's not that confusing. So he kind of goes back and forth. But Renji, what are your thoughts on watching that video? And what insight do you have for us?
Well, first off, that's horrible because especially if these are people taking care of our finances as a government. Because we've talked about this a little bit before we started the live and recording. It's like a horrible business, right? If that was a business, they would go bankrupt way before how far we've gotten. So, it's horrible, especially if you don't know how to budget yourself and work out your finances, no matter what you get into, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, or you're going to lose a lot of money or go out of business somehow, right down the road. So you got to know, how much are you putting aside savings wise for emergencies? How much are you putting aside? How much are you borrowing? How much can I pay back? What is my revenue? You need to know all that stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be in a lot of trouble down the line. So yeah, it's a horribly run business is what it is.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, one thing I thought as you were talking is we've talked about before how new entrepreneurs always think that they have to know everything before they get started, right? But before they start a business or launch anything. And clearly, this is somebody in a position where he should know the answer to this question. It's not that difficult. And we'll go over our breakdown and how we would have answered, and what the answer really is. But you don't have to know everything, to be in a position of that, where he's the chair council of economic advisors, like it said, right? But basically, the initial question he was asked was, why are we borrowing in a currency that we print ourselves? Why do we even borrow money if we print the money? And the simple answer to that is, like, you don't want to just print a bunch of money, because then that leads to inflation, right? Something we can talk about on another podcast, why that happens. But like, they limit the amount purposely that they print for multiple reasons. The main one being inflation. And for that, because money printing is limited, they do have to resort to borrowing money, even the same money that they print. And the reason they have to do that is because the government is a business, right? And like any business, they have income and they have expenses. Their income is, guess what? It's taxes. That's how the government makes income. It's from our taxes and from corporations' taxes. But the government also has expenses that go out. What are their expenses? Their expenses are Social Security, Medicare, healthcare, for military and our defense, and also interest on their debt, right? And the interest on our debt happens because we have so much more in expenses going out than we have coming in for income, that we actually have to pay a lot of interest on our own debt. The exact number of what the interest is every single year, I don't remember, but it's a lot. But like, for this year, I did write it down. In 2024, the U.S. is on pace to have $1.6 trillion in income, less than what they have going out to expenses. So that's only going to be adding to the debt level. But simply enough, that's why we have to borrow our own money. And he mentioned something about treasury bonds and how that works. Treasury bonds, simply enough, either individuals or corporations buy treasury bonds, which gives the government money, yes, to go out and have their other expenses. But with treasury bonds, there's always an interest. So if the government takes $1,000 from a person, they have to pay back that $1,000 with interest later on. And how do they pay back that interest? They pay back that interest by printing more money. So let's say it's, they need to pay back $50 in interest. Where does that $50 come from? That comes from printing the $50 to be paid back, if we're just using really, really small numbers. So that's what kind of starts this whole money printing process. And it's similar to if you have a friend that racks up credit card debt. The more debt that they get into, the more that they pay in interest, and the worse that it is and the harder that it is for them to get out of. It's the same exact thing for the government on the federal level. It's just nobody really talks about it. And apparently, they don't even really know how money works, because that was an awkward interview from a documentary that we should probably go watch the full documentary. But like, that's why we can't just print more money. And that's why we have to borrow our money, because we can't print unlimited amounts, right? Renji, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, this just shows more that our taxes are going to go up, right? Because if our debt, like you said before, if it's 1.6 trillion less, if the income we're making is 1.6 trillion less than what we owe, our taxes are going to go up because our debt is going to keep going up. What is it right now? 34 trillion, I think, and climbing.
Yeah.
I think the last time I checked it was 34 trillion.7 or something like that. So it's close to 35 trillion. So it's only going to keep going up, especially if the revenue that the government brings in is less than what they owe. It's only going to keep going up. So, and the only way to pay that down is to go up in taxes, because what is that paying off? Some of the things we've talked about, Social Security, that's where it goes to. That's why we talked about how Social Security might not be around in 20, 30 years, right? If it lasts that long too, right? So they have to keep going up on the taxes to be able to afford paying for these things and paying for the interest, and that's not even talking about paying down the debt. That's just paying interest, right? So this is why we harp on getting your own passive income or setting up tax-free accounts, because you don't have to worry about the government changing the tax percentages on you down the line, because you keep pushing it aside. It only affects you more when you're retiring and you need that money more than right now. Because right now you're working, you can make more money, you can take another job, make more money somehow. And right now, because you have income coming in, it's easier to borrow money too. Once you're retiring, you don't have income coming in other than what you've saved up for retirement. And banks don't like lending money to people that can't pay. Right. So it's harder. It's going to be harder for borrowing. It's going to be harder to live off of less money because the taxes are so high. So this is why it's better to start passive incomes, side hustles or something, or even save money into tax-free accounts. And to go a step further, if you have tax-free secure accounts, you're not even losing money. So you're protected from loss and protected from taxes. So you're going to have, if you didn't get into any type of passive income strategies, you're still going to have more money to live off of when you retire. Anything you want to add, Kyle? And what were your thoughts on some of those things?
Absolutely. I mean, this just goes more in depth on, why proper financial planning moving forward is going to be so important, because we don't know what the future holds. We have people that can't even explain the basics of how money works, and what they're going to resort to is just raising taxes. How does the government make money from taxes? What's the simplest solution? Is going to be raising taxes, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're not thinking about this now, and you're not planning for this now, it's just going to come to bite you in the behind, 20, 30 years from now when you go to retire. So this is why proper financial planning is so important. This is why understanding how money works is so important, not only for you today, but for you in the future as well. And so with that, I think that's all I've got for today's show. Renji, anything else you want to wrap us up with?
No, I think that's good. I think
Awesome.
We've talked enough about this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you guys got, any good value out of this, make sure to like the video and share it with a friend. Leave your thoughts below as well. What do you think of this, chairman of the board of advisors that can't even explain this simple question in an interview? Let us know your comments below. And with that, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.